gentle hush settles, like dust choosing a place to land. And then, as if you simply blinked a little too long, you find yourself waking in a winter monastery. A Benedictine house, stone-walled and frost-edged. The good news: no one expects you to ring any bells just yet. The other news, slightly more ambiguous: you do seem to be holding a quill. And there is a stack of parchment watching you with the patient stare of someone who knows you won't escape your duties. Not tonight. For now, simply breathe. Let the winter quiet soften its weight upon your shoulders. You hear a very subtle crackle. Not a fire, no. Just the slow settling of old beams under cold air. A faint scent of ink, sharp and metallic, rises from the kalam in your hand. The air around you tastes of stored grain and old wool. Your fingertips brush the rough grain of the parchment. It's cool, almost shy, waiting for your touch. A draft slides across the stone floor, as light as a ghost with good manners. And through it all, somewhere behind these walls, a few monks hum a line of nocturnal chant. Calm, steady, slower than snowfall. And this is only your first minute here. You sit at your desk, a sturdy wooden thing that might have existed for 100 winters already. Its surface is scarred by the small private battles of scribes. A knife slip here, an ink blot there, a hurried correction reduced to a faint bruise under fresh sanded grain. Your candle is thin but willing, giving just enough light to catch the motes in the cold air. You curl a little closer to it, feeling that tiny circle of heat on your cheek while the rest of the room insists on being brisk. You take a breath, noticing how the dryness of winter makes the parchment curl slightly at the edges. A quiet reminder: winter cares little for the needs of bookmaking. Your morning, if one can call this deep blue hour morning, begins with the simplest habit: adjusting the layers of wool on your shoulders. The robe scratches faintly, a comfortable kind of annoyance. It feels honest, like the monastery itself. You pull your hood lower, out of habit rather than necessity, and listen again to that breathy hum of chant in the distance. And it is still not yet dawn. In the scriptorium, life begins in tiny movements. A monk clears his throat softly. Another shifts his stool, the wooden legs dragging just enough to let you picture the marks they'll leave on the flagstones. Someone sneezes, politely, almost apologetically, and then apologizes for sneezing. The gesture is amusingly futile, because the silence here is never truly broken. It simply changes shape for a heartbeat or two. A faint scent of beeswax rises as a brother lights a new candle. You let these details wash over you. You know they mean you are waking not just into a place, but into a rhythm. You dip your quill. The tip sinks into the ink like a shadow returning to its owner. The first strokes feel foreign, not because the letters are strange, but because your fingers are still thawing. You find yourself working slowly, letting each letter take its time. A small pile of pumice powder sits nearby, ready to smooth out mistakes. A comfort, really. You glance at it like one glances at a friend who quietly forgives everything. And though you've written only a single word, someone at the other end of the long table has already completed a line. Still, the day has barely begun. And if you think you're behind now, just wait until the prayers begin. Your breath makes its own faint cloud in the cold. You didn't expect that. The thought of writing while making tiny weather patterns feels oddly charming. Each exhale a puff of winter fog that dissolves before you can truly see it. You glance toward the windows, tall, narrow slits in the stone, but they offer nothing but darkness and frost, a delicate lace of frost that seems as proud of itself as any master illuminator could be. A brother walking past you murmurs a greeting so gentle it feels like a leaf brushing your ear. His steps are soft, trained by years of choosing silence. He carries a small bucket of sand, used to dry ink or steady candles. It leaves a faint earthy aroma as he moves, a reminder that even in winter, the world is made of soil somewhere beneath the snow. And it is still not quite morning. You rise from your stool, stretching your stiff shoulders. The room creaks with you or perhaps at you. Monasteries have their own sense of humor, slow and structural. You step outside into the cloister walk, letting the cold air greet you with an immediacy that might be considered rude if it weren't so refreshing. Snow lies in the open courtyard like a wool blanket left untouched. The sky is a deep indigo, pierced only by a faint suggestion of stars. Your breath tastes of stone and cold. The hallway echoes your soft footsteps, each one a little hollow, like tapping on a loaf of bread to see if it's baked through. Your fingers trace the wall as you move. The stone is colder than the air, almost metallic, as though it holds centuries of winter within it. A monk ahead of you carries a lantern. Its glow is soft and shy, the kind of light that apologizes for being seen. You follow at a respectful distance, moving toward the refectory. Your stomach is not exactly hungry. Rather, it is politely reminding you that it exists. In a place where meals come at fixed hours and with predictable modesty, even that faint signal feels like a luxury. Inside, the smell of barley broth lingers from the last meal. Simple, comforting, loyal to its task. A hint of herbs, dried long ago, still asserts itself. The benches stand in rows like orderly soldiers who forgot their mission. The wooden bowls are stacked neatly, the spoons laid beside them, each one worn smooth by hundreds of hands. You run your thumb along one spoon, feeling the indentation where a finger once pressed day after day. There is a humanity in such marks, a quiet testimony to those who came before you. And yes, it is still not fully morning. Your tasks today will include not just writing, but tending to the small but persistent needs of winter. Fetching water, which will be cold enough to dazzle your wrists. Checking the cloister gutters for ice that might weigh down the lead-lined roof. Beating dust from cloaks that somehow gather more debris in the winter despite everyone staying indoors. And, of course, practicing the chant, a discipline that warms the lungs if not the toes. When you return to the scriptorium, you find your stool waiting with a sort of paternal patience. You sit. You dip your quill again. The ink shivers in its pot when a breeze creeps across the tabletop. You settle your left hand on the parchment, palm gently anchoring its corner. You begin to copy a passage. Nothing dramatic, just a moral reflection from a monk whose neat handwriting puts yours to mild shame. But it is steady work, and steady work is winter's true gift. You notice the scent of tallow, faint but familiar. Someone has replaced a candle nearby. The new wick burns unevenly, sending up a tiny curl of smoke that tastes faintly of burnt linen. It's not unpleasant. Feels like the room clearing its throat. Your quill scratches lightly, the sound like a small creature scurrying on stone. One stroke at a time, one letter at a time, one breath after another, and it is somehow still early. A brother across from you sneezes again. Another apology. You suppress a smile. You've never heard anyone sneeze in such a well-behaved manner. He blushes faintly, then resumes his work, tracing illuminations with delicate brushstrokes. Gold leaf glints under candlelight, soft as the wing of a moth. The shimmer is a reminder that winter may rule the air, but beauty persists stubbornly at the edges of cold days. Soon you pause to flex your fingers. The chill is creeping in. Winter seldom misses an opportunity. You blow gently on your hands, warming them with slow, steady breath. The warmth returns reluctantly, like a cat deciding whether to trust you. You look down at your parchment, now half filled with text. It's not perfect, but then nothing in winter is, and that's part of the charm. Or so you tell yourself. You rise again, this time to fetch water. The jug is heavy, the stone floor uneven. Your feet feel every pebble through the thin soles of your shoes. Outside, the snow is brighter now, touched by the faintest suggestion of dawn. The air smells of iron and pine. You take a cautious sip from the jug, cold enough to make your teeth retreat in self-defense, but refreshing in that bracing way winter often demands. As you carry the water back inside, you hear the distant ringing of a bell, soft like a spoon tapping a cup. It signals the next short interval of prayer. You join the others in the chapel, where breath clouds drift gently into the stillness. The chant begins, layered and slow, as if each voice is letting the sound settle before offering the next note. You listen rather than sing. The melody wraps around you like a wool cloak warmed by someone else's body heat. The candles flicker, casting small halos on the stone. Afterward, you linger for a moment near the doorway. A draft curls around your ankles. You feel a familiar mix of serenity and absurdity. Serenity in the ritual, absurdity in the fact that you still cannot feel your toes. Outside, the sky continues its slow brightening, though the sun remains shy. You take a long breath, savoring the faint scent of incense left behind from yesterday's service. A sweet, resinous trace that clings to the cold. Time passes in its patient, Benedictine way. When you return to your desk, you find a small loaf of dark rye beside your parchment. Someone must have left it during prayer, a quiet kindness. The bread smells sour, earthy, a little smoky. You break off a piece, chew slowly. The flavor is dense but honest, and it anchors you. It reminds you that winter is not merely endured, it is accompanied. And the day, if you can believe it, has only just begun. You resume your writing, and soon the scriptorium becomes a symphony of small, persistent sounds. The scratching of quills, the whisper of pages turned, the clink of ink pots, the soft shifting of robes. Each noise a tiny cog in the slow machinery of winter living. You breathe it in. You let it steady you. You let it guide you, and you know with a quiet, amused certainty that this is still only the morning's first chapter. You settle once more into the scriptorium, though now the room feels slightly brighter. Dawn has not yet shown its full face, but it is somewhere behind those frost-webbed windows, stretching, yawning, perhaps adjusting its own cloak of clouds. You sit with the faint sense that the day has begun to notice you. And in a monastery, being noticed by the day is both comforting and mildly inconvenient. You lift your quill again. The ink has thickened from the cold, It resists with the stubbornness of old molasses. You stir it gently with the quill's tip, watching faint swirls darken the surface. When you write, the first few letters are sluggish, like a choir warming up its voices after a night of quiet. But then the ink begins to flow, and the letters march into place, obedient and small. The sounds around you shift. Someone renews the fire in the brazier down the hall. You hear the scrape of iron, the sigh of a log accepting flame. The warmth barely reaches the scriptorium, but the promise of it is enough to lift your spirits. A monk steps past you carrying a stack of fresh parchment, each sheet stiff as a winter leaf. As he walks, the edges whisper against each other, a soft papery hiss that tickles your ears. And you think, yes, this is still early, and winter has only just started telling its stories. You pause to stretch your neck, rolling your shoulders in slow, careful circles. The hood of your robe shifts slightly, brushing your cheek with its familiar woolen scratch. There is something grounding in that texture, like a reminder that you are wrapped in traditions older than almost anything else in your life. The wool smells faintly of lanolin, clean and animal warm, a scent that feels oddly reassuring in a stone building filled with cold corners. A brother at the far end of the table hums softly. Not a chant, not a melody you recognize, more like a contemplative murmur. Perhaps he is rehearsing the sequence for morning prayers. Or perhaps he's keeping himself from freezing in place. Hard to know. Hardly matters. The sound layers itself into the environment gently, like the lowest brushstroke in a larger painting. You take a sip from your wooden cup, only to learn that the water has reached a temperature best described as monastic mischief. It bites at your teeth, then rushes down your throat with a clarity that leaves you blinking. You set the cup down carefully, feeling the faint tremor in your fingers. Winter has a way of claiming your hands before anything else. A few minutes later, or what feels like a few minutes, though time here is slow and syrup-like, someone arrives with a small basket of glowing embers carried from the kitchen hearth. He transfers a few to the braziers in the corners. The modest flames rise, stretching themselves like cats awakened from a nap. The sudden warmth is delicate, almost shy, brushing your ankles as if asking permission to stay. You accept gladly, and the day nudges forward a fraction. You return to your parchment. You're copying a moral tale, one about a monk who learned patience by waiting 20 years for an almond tree to bloom. You raise an eyebrow at the lesson. Perhaps not every virtue requires such dramatic timelines, but you keep writing, letting the story unfold in its slow, dignified pace. Your quill taps softly at the end of each line, like a heartbeat. The morning progresses, though the light from the windows still feels hesitant. Winter sun has a tendency to drag its feet. You stand once more to stretch, rubbing the stiffness from your hands. Your breath plumes faintly before you, dissolving quickly into the room. The stone beneath your feet is colder now, perhaps in solidarity with the air outside. You shuffle your weight from one foot to the other, noticing how your soles feel every contour of the floor. You decide to walk the cloister again. The corridor meets you like an old friend unchanged by your absence. Cold, wide, echoing. Your steps produce small, round sounds that drift upward toward the arches. The courtyard is brighter, the snow picking up a faint glow from the sky. You press your palm briefly to the stone balustrade. The cold leaps into your skin, sharp but clean, and you withdraw your hand with a startled whisper of breath. A monk is sweeping snow from the path that leads to the herb garden. You watch for a moment, admiring the quiet rhythm of the broom, the gentle arc of powder falling from its bristles. You would help, perhaps, but the sweep seems almost meditative for him, and you would hate to interrupt such tranquility. Besides, winter does not wait. By the time he finishes, the first patch he cleared will likely be white again. But this, too, is the rhythm of the place. You return inside, letting the warmer air wrap around you like a soft, tired hug. A faint aroma greets you from the kitchen. Barley again, perhaps simmering with onions or something similar. You follow the scent to the refectory, where a pot hangs over a small fire, steaming gently. The cook, a monk with patient eyes and flower on his sleeve, stirs with the serenity of someone who has accepted the universe's simple truths. The broth will never be exciting, but it will always be faithful. You taste a spoonful when offered. It is both too hot and too plain, yet somehow exactly right. The warmth spreads across your tongue, then drifts down your throat in a slow wave. You close your eyes for a moment, savoring the way it settles in your stomach like a glowing coal. You murmur gratitude. The cook nods, pleased in the quiet way monastery cooks tend to be pleased. Back in the scriptorium, the light strengthens. It is still gray, still reluctant, but at least it is present. You breathe in the faint scent of warmed parchment as sunlight touches a stack near the window. The room feels more alive now. Quills scratch more confidently. The monks sit straighter. The air hums with a softer tension. The tension of concentration, commitment, and perhaps a bit of the hope that lunch will come sooner rather than later. And yet, you realize with a soft sigh, it is still not noon. A brother beside you begins illuminating the initial letter of a new page. He works with a tiny brush, dipping it into pigments he keeps in small shells. Blue made from crushed stones, red made from minerals, gold from leaf so thin it trembles at the slightest breath. You watch the transformation, a simple letter blooming into something nearly alive. The detail is exquisite, almost fragile. You admire the patience it requires, the delicacy, the devotion. Your own work feels plain in comparison. Lines of text, steady but unadorned. Yet you remind yourself that every manuscript needs its scaffold before it can be dressed in beauty. And besides, the rhythm of writing is its own quiet pleasure. You dip your quill again, tracing the shapes of letters that have survived centuries. As you write, you hear a faint tapping, the sound of snow slipping from the roof and striking the wooden eaves. Winter's slow applause. A brief breeze drifts through the room when someone opens the door. It smells of snow and pine, of open air and quiet breath. The candles flicker in surprise, shadows jumping along the walls like small startled animals. You feel the chill creep into your sleeves before the door closes again. It lingers long after the footsteps fade. Later, your tasks shift. You are asked to help check the water barrels near the well. The path outside crunches under your feet, the snow compacting into a softer, denser layer. The cold meets your face immediately, brisk and uncomplicated. The barrels sit half-frozen. The surface of the water is an uneven sheet of ice, thin enough to break, thick enough to resist at first. You crack it gently with a wooden pole, watching shards drift like glass petals. One touches your fingertip by accident, biting, sharp, honest. Your breath forms clouds that drift upward before dissolving. The world smells of wet wood, iron, and the faint sap of dormant trees. The cold here is deeper, louder. You fill a bucket, then lift it carefully, feeling the chill seep through the handle. By the time you return inside, your hands echo with numbness, as though you've been carrying pieces of winter itself. Warming them by the brazier feels like permission to return to your body. The heat prickles painfully at first, then melts into comfort. You hold your hands close, palms out, watching the faint shimmer of heat rise. Your robe absorbs some of it, softening against your chest. When your fingers stop trembling, you exhale slowly, grateful. The next bell rings. Not loudly. Nothing here is loud, but clearly. A gentle chime that moves through the stone corridors like a soft reminder. Time for the midday office, though midday is still reluctant. You join the others in the chapel again. The air inside is colder than the hallways, the walls holding tightly to their chill. The candles do their best, but their glow feels small. The chant begins, slow, layered, measured. Each voice enters as though stepping into a river, allowing the current to guide rather than carry them. You listen, letting the sound settle over your skin, your thoughts, your breath. The notes echo faintly from the high ceiling, softening as they fall. You feel your shoulders release a tension you didn't realize was there. The air tastes of incense and old stone. After prayer, the monks file toward the refectory. Lunch is quiet, simple, predictable. Barley broth again, with a bit of root vegetable added for variety. Bread, slightly stale but still hearty. A small piece of cheese, fragrant and mild. You eat slowly, savoring the warmth more than the flavors. The spoon clinks softly against your wooden bowl. Someone farther down the table clears his throat. The windows show nothing but pale sky and drifting snow. You are full enough, warm enough, present enough. Once meal and brief rest are over, the afternoon begins. You return again to the scriptorium, because winter afternoons in a monastery belong to ink and parchment as surely as mornings do. The light from the windows is stronger now, bright but cool, like a polite stranger who doesn't wish to intrude. You pull your stool closer to your desk, adjusting your robe around your knees to keep the cold from seeping too deeply. You resume writing. The letters come more easily now, your hand warmed by food and prayer. The quill glides in smooth arcs, leaving slender trails of ink behind. The parchment responds with a soft, dry whisper. Your eyes trace each word carefully, not too slow, not too fast. You breathe with the rhythm of the lines. And soon, the world narrows to the candle, the ink, the steady march of text unfolding beneath your hand. A monk sneezes again, the same polite sneeze as before. Another apology. You smile internally. Some rhythms never change. And as you finish another page, you lean back slightly, resting your eyes. The room glows with the pale winter afternoon. The candles flicker. The air holds the faintest scent of broth and beeswax. And you think, with gentle, amused acceptance, that it is still far from evening. The afternoon settles around you with that steady, measured confidence winter seems to possess. Not rushing, not dragging, simply existing in long, even breaths. You straighten your posture, feeling the familiar weight of your robe fall along your sides, while settling into its natural folds. The scriptorium's stillness is no longer the stillness of morning frost. It is the stillness of work that has found its rhythm. You flex your fingers again. They creak like small wooden hinges, but they obey. That is enough. You dip the quill, lifting it just slightly to watch a small bead of ink gather at the nib. Trembles, heavy with purpose. You touch it to the parchment, and the bead becomes a stroke, the stroke becomes a letter, and the letter becomes another link in the chain of the day. The monks around you move with slow intent. One adjusts his candle wick. Another brushes a stray grain of pumice from his page. Someone near the window shifts to catch the pale light more directly. The room seems to breathe through them, each movement a rise or fall of some larger, invisible chest. The scent of ink is sharper now, warmed slightly by the afternoon air. The parchment has softened too, no longer curling quite so stubbornly at its edges. You pause to listen. A soft tapping, snow sliding down the outer wall. A whispered cough, someone clearing winter from their throat. The faint sigh of a stool as a monk leans forward. All of it blends together into a quiet symphony, the kind that keeps you anchored, soothed, gently aware. You turn a page. The rustle is crisp, clean, faintly papery in its honesty. As the new sheet lies before you, blank but full of expectation, you take a moment to appreciate its simplicity. The faint pores in the surface, the small inconsistencies that prove a human hand scraped this, stretched this, smoothed this. The trace of the animal at once was a faint scent, a faint texture, an echo of warmth and life now transformed into this pale, silent canvas. Outside, the wind shifts. You feel it before you hear it. A subtle pressure, a slight shiver of cold sneaking under the wooden door. Then the sound arrives, the soft brushing of snow against stone, the quiet rustle of winter rearranging itself. You close your eyes briefly, breathing in the cold-to-warm exchange that always happens between indoors and out. And when you open them again, you feel more rooted than before. The next microchapter of your day comes in the form of water duty once more. A younger monk approaches you with a soft tap to your shoulder, so light it might have been a snowflake landing. He nods toward the courtyard. You nod back. The exchange does not require words. In monasteries, silence is a language more fluent than speech. You gather your cloak and step into the cloister walk. The air hits your face like a polite slap, brisk, clarifying, earnest. Snow drifts lazily in the space between arches, settling onto the stone floor in small patches that melt slowly under the faint warmth radiating from the walls. You walk along the covered path, the sound of your footsteps muted, as though winter has laid a blanket not just on the ground but on the very air. At the well, the bucket waits for you like a patient animal. You lift it, the rope scratching softly against the rim. As you lower it, you hear the hollow slip of the rope, the faint creak of wood, the distant splash when the bucket finally meets the water far below. The sound reverberates up the stone shaft, echoing faintly, surprisingly musical. When you pull it up, the bucket drips small icy beads onto your hands. The cold bites gently, sharp enough to wake you, soft enough not to punish. You carry the bucket along the walkway, feeling each step through the thin soles of your shoes. The smell of the water is clean, almost metallic. You inhale deeply, as though drinking before drinking. Inside again, the warmth brushes your face. Your hands throb with returning heat, that painful pleasant ache of fingers coming back to life. You set the bucket down near the kitchen entrance, nodding to the cook who greets you with a soft smile and a murmured blessing. He is stirring something thicker now, perhaps the evening porridge or a pot of stewed lentils. The scent is earthy, warm, promising. You linger a moment, enjoying the kitchen's slightly higher temperature. The stones here seem less cold, the air more forgiving. The cook hands you a small piece of bread, dark crust, dense crumb. You accept it with silent gratitude. The taste is rustic, gently sour, grounding. You finish it slowly, letting each bite dissolve into comfort. Then, back to the scriptorium. The cycle is gentle, predictable, patient, like tracing the same path in snow until it becomes a small hollow where your mind can rest. The light through the windows has shifted again. It is a bit more golden now, though still faint, as though the sun is offering its warmth from afar rather than stepping fully into its duties. Dust motes drift in the sunlight, turning lazily like dancers who know no one is watching. You find yourself watching anyway, following their slow, spiraling descent. You return to your writing. The quill glides more easily. The text thickens line by line. Your mind softens, slipping into the quiet trance of steady work. You feel the weight of the hours in your shoulders, but also the calm that comes with repetition. Winter is a season of endurance, but also a season of simplicity. Fewer distractions, fewer demands, more room to breathe. At some point, not far into the stretch of time, though it feels wonderfully long, you hear a faint knocking sound. A monk tapping a block of wood on the table to signal a break. Stretching time, shoulder-saving time, sanity-saving time. You set down your quill with relief disguised as obedience. When you stand, your legs feel wooden for a moment. You walk slowly along the length of the scriptorium, rolling your shoulders, easing your neck. You pause at one of the narrow windows. The ledge is cold, but you rest your fingertips on it anyway. Outside, snow still falls, though more lightly now. Thin strands of white descending like threads unraveled from winter's cloak. Another monk approaches, holding a small tray of warm stones wrapped in cloth. He places one at each monk's workstation, a simple kindness to help keep ink from freezing and hands from stiffening. When you unwrap yours and rest your palms briefly on the warm surface, the sensation sinks into your skin like a whispered blessing. You hold the stone a little longer than necessary, letting it thaw you quietly from the inside out. Then back to work. The afternoon hums onward. After some time, perhaps an hour, perhaps a little more, you hear distant footsteps in the hallway. A novice hurries past the door, his robe swishing in a flurry of wool. His expression carries a hint of concern, but not alarm. Winter does not allow for haste without reason. You watch him disappear around the corner, curiosity rising like mist in your chest. But then he returns with two monks carrying a small bundle of wood. They slip quietly into the refectory. More firewood, the simple, necessary preparation for evening. The afternoon deepens, and the scriptorium grows busier in a strangely gentle way. More pages turn. More quills scratch. Someone coughs softly. Someone sighs. Someone adjusts a candle and whispers a prayer under their breath. You feel yourself immersed not just in tasks but in the shared intimacy of communal work. Even in silence, there is companionship. Eventually, a bell rings. The sound is soft, just a muted chime drifting through stone corridors, but it cuts cleanly through your concentration. The hour of manual labor. You join the monks outside in the courtyard, where snow is still falling in a soft whisper. Today's tasks involve clearing the cloister walkway and checking the herb beds protected under straw mats. Your hands grow cold quickly, but the rhythmic brushing of snow becomes almost meditative. The bristles of the broom rasp lightly against stone. Snow piles softly at the edges. The sky curls into deeper shades of gray. When you kneel to inspect the herb beds, the straw smells faintly of summer. Dried sunshine, hayfields, warmth stored like a memory. You lift a corner of the mat carefully. Underneath, thin shoots still cling to life, pale but persistent. You lower the straw again gently, like tucking someone into bed. Your breath fogs the air. The snowflakes that land on your robe melt slowly, leaving small dark patches. The cold kisses your face with quiet insistence. You straighten your back and take another slow breath, feeling how winter settles into your bones but without malice, just presence. By the time the bell rings again, calling you to the late afternoon office, your fingers are numb and your shoulders pleasantly tired. You brush snow from your robe and step inside. The air greets you with warmth, but not too much warmth. Monasteries never spoil you. They simply care for you in small, steady doses. Inside the chapel, the candles burn lower. Shadows reach farther across the floor. You take your place, bow your head. The chant begins again, slower this time, deeper. Each note seems to linger longer in the air. The voices blend into a soft river that carries your thoughts away. You breathe, you listen, you feel yourself settle. When the prayer ends, silence flows back into the space, heavier now, flavored with twilight. Evening is not here yet, but close, closer than before, and you are still wrapped in winter's long, slow whisper. The twilight hour in a Benedictine monastery does not arrive suddenly. It gathers. It gathers in door frames, in the corners of arches, in the seams of stone blocks that have endured centuries of winters. It settles in folds of wool and in the soft exhaustion of hands that have copied pages all day. By the time you step out of the chapel, twilight is already waiting for you like a patient companion. The corridors have changed. They feel narrower somehow, though nothing in the architecture has moved. It is the light that has shifted, pulling back from the edges, drawing the world into a quieter shape. You walk slowly, letting your fingers brush the wall. The stones feel cooler now, the texture rougher, as if the day's warmth has completely drained away. Your footsteps echo softly, a hollow puff of sound that rises and falls in gentle rhythm. In the distance, someone is tending the evening fire. You hear the muted clink of iron tools, the sigh of wood accepting flame. The scent drifts toward you. Smoke, faint resin, a whisper of pine. It mingles with the usual monastery smells. Wool robes aired in cold weather, ink heated by candle flames, and the humble, earthy fragrance of lentils simmered earlier in the kitchen. Your stomach offers a polite reminder of its own existence, but not with urgency. Hunger here is modest, never dramatic. You smile faintly at that thought, amused by the discipline of your own body after so many quiet hours. You enter the scriptorium again. The light is thin now, mostly from candles. A few monks remain, their faces softened by warm flicker. Shadows cling to the floor like calm pools of ink. The windows show nothing but a darkening sky, snowflakes drifting across the glass with slow, deliberate persistence. Your desk seems different in this dusklit room, more intimate, more your own. You sit with a gentle sigh, feeling the wooden stool creak under you like an old friend shifting to make room. The parchment in front of you glows faintly in the candlelight, a pale island in a sea of deepening shade. You dip your quill. The ink looks darker now, thicker somehow, as though twilight itself has seeped into it. When you begin to write, the letters seem sharper, more defined. Perhaps it's the contrast of light and shadow. Or perhaps it's simply that evening brings a clarity morning cannot. Across the room, a monk coughs softly, more from cold than illness. The sound stirs the candle flames, tiny tremors of gold. The scriptorium responds in its own way. A rustle of parchment, the quiet clearing of a throat, the faint sigh of someone shifting posture after long work. Evening writing has a different energy, less ambitious, less hurried. The world narrows to the circle of light in front of you. The quill feels heavier, but the parchment feels softer. The work becomes more deliberate, more tender. A faint scent of tallow rises from your candle. Beeswax would burn sweeter, but winter demands thrift, and tallow is steady and reliable. You breathe in the slightly smoky, slightly animal scent, letting it settle in the air around you. It is a scent that belongs to history, to centuries of scribes hunched over pages, copying wisdom for strangers they would never meet. You notice your breath again, still visible in faint little puffs. The cold is returning. It gathers in the toes first, then moves up with the slow determination of a rising tide. You curl your feet under your robe, feeling the ruff will brush against your skin. This gesture is as much part of the monastic routine as any prayer. You finish a paragraph, then another. Then you pause to stretch your fingers, rubbing a thumb along the callus forming near the base of your quill grip. The skin is tender but resilient. You flex your wrist slowly, feeling the gentle pull of tendons. Someone enters the scriptorium quietly. A lantern bobbing in his hand casts soft ripples of light across the walls. It's one of the older monks, the kind of elder whose silence feels like a blanket. He does not speak. He simply checks that candles are trimmed and that no parchment lies too close to flame. His presence brings a calm that deepens the room's stillness. When he leaves, even the shadows seem more settled. You take this as a sign to rest your eyes. Closing them briefly, you listen to the ambient sounds of evening work. The faint scrape of quill on parchment, the flutter of a page being turned, the gentle tap of a monk adjusting his ink pot, the soft hum of a chant someone forgot to stop. When you open your eyes, the candle seems slightly shorter. Time has thinned it without your noticing. A monk approaches with a tray of small clay cups. Warm drink, likely a weak spiced infusion or simply heated water. You accept one with both hands, feeling the heat seep into your palms. The steam rises in soft curls, bringing with it the scent of herbs, chamomile, perhaps, or dried mint saved from the summer garden. You take a sip. The warmth spreads through your chest, gentle and steady. It loosens something in your shoulders, something in your breath. You return the cup to the tray with a grateful nod. The monk moves on, distributing warmth as quietly as snowfall. The bell for supper rings. thin sound but clear. It threads through the air like a silver thread, gathering monks from corners of the building. You stand, letting your robe settle around your legs, and join the slow procession toward the refectory. Inside, the tables are lit by only a few lanterns. Shadows stretch long across the wooden benches. The meal is simple. Lentils stewed until soft, a slice of coarse bread, and perhaps a sliver of apple preserved from autumn. You eat quietly, listening to the soft murmur of utensils against bowls. A monk reads aloud from a text, his voice calm, steady, drifting through the space like a mild winter wind. You do not follow every word. You simply let the cadence wrap around you. When supper ends, the monks file out with the same calm order. You linger a moment, enjoying the lingering warmth of the room. Then you follow, stepping once more into the colder hall. Compline approaches, the final prayer of the day. The chapel glows with candlelight when you enter. The flames dance gently, painting the pillars in gold. You take your place, lowering your hood. The air is cold enough that your breath becomes a pale cloud once more. The chant begins. This one is slower than the others, softer, a kind of musical exhale. The harmony settles into you like warm wool. You sing this time quietly, unsure, but present. The notes rest on your tongue like thin flakes of snow. The final phrase lingers long after the voices fall silent, suspended in the air until even its memory dissolves. You bow and rise. The day, such as it was, is folded away like parchment under a stone weight. After prayer, you walk back through the cloister. Night has fully arrived. The sky is a deep velvet, dusted with faint stars that flicker behind slow-moving clouds. The courtyard is still, the snow reflecting a faint blue-gray glow. Your footsteps crunch softly on the cold floor. You pause, watching your breath form brief white blossoms. Back in your chamber, a small cell, barely larger than its bed. You close the wooden shutter against the cold. Your room smells of wool and old wood. You sit on the edge of the bed, running your fingers over the rough blankets. The straw mattress rustles softly beneath you. Then comes the nightly ritual. Removing your outer robe, folding it neatly, stretching your hands toward the small candle on your table, exhaling slowly as your muscles settle. The candle flame flickers in the draft, casting a small gold halo onto the walls. You lie down, pulling the blanket over your shoulders. The fabric is scratchy but warm. Your limbs relax one by one, sinking into the straw beneath. The silence is deeper here. No quills, no chanting, only the faint murmur of wind through distant stones. You close your eyes. The scent of ink still clings faintly to your fingers. The soft echo of chant hums somewhere in your memory. And as you drift towards sleep, winter rests around you like a heavy cloak. Not cold, not forbidding, simply present. And it is only the end of one day. Dawn arrives in the monastery not with brilliance, not with color, but with the softest thinning of darkness. You awaken slowly, as though your mind is wrapped in a wool cloak and reluctant to shrug it off. Your cell is still dim, the air cool enough to make you curl your toes before you even open your eyes. You inhale, and the room greets you with familiar scents. Dry wood, wool blankets, a hint of cold stone. You sit up, stretching gently. The straw mattress rustles beneath you like dried grass under a summer wind, a sound strangely comforting in this midwinter world. The candle on your small table has burned down to a tiny pool of hardened wax. A memory of last night's glow. You rub your eyes. Breath leaves your mouth in a small cloud. Winter is awake before you. As you stand, your robe brushes your ankles with its usual coarse kindness. You drape it over your shoulders, tying it loosely. The fabric is cold at first, then warms slightly from your touch. Stepping toward the small shuttered window, you unlatch it just a finger's width. Cold air slips through immediately, greeting you with an icy kiss to the forehead. The courtyard beyond is still blue-gray, not yet fully claimed by dawn. You close the shutter again. Enough cold to remind you where you are, but not enough to join you for breakfast. You step into the corridor. The chill there is sharper, richer, as though it has been storing itself all night. The stones under your feet feel like a winter riverbed, solid, ancient, indifferent. You walk slowly, letting your body adjust to the temperature the way a monk adjusts to silence. Patiently. Ahead, a brother carries a lantern. The light sways, warming the darkness without conquering it. You fall into step behind him, both of you quiet, both of you guided by that small flickering flame. It smells faintly of oil and smoke. The chapel awaits. Inside, darkness still pools around the stone pillars. Only a few candles burn, their flames tall and steady, as though they've been rehearsing all night for this moment. The monks gather, hoods up, hands tucked inside sleeves for warmth. Their breaths rise in pale spirals. The first chant of the day begins. It is slow. It is soft. It is a kind of breathing. You listen, letting the sound settle into your chest. The notes are low, humble, like footsteps in snow. The harmony wraps around your mind in a way that makes you blink more slowly, breathe more deeply. You feel the day unfold in your lungs, as though the chant itself is instructing you how to enter morning gently. When the final note fades, silence returns with its familiar weight. You step out into the cloister again, the first threads of daylight stretching through the arches. Snowflakes drift lazily in the air, moving without urgency, as if nothing in winter ever needs to rush. The courtyard is untouched, smooth as cream, soft as breath. Your footsteps crunch quietly along the walkway. In the refectory, warm steam already rises from the large pot near the hearth. The cook must have woken even earlier. The scent is simple. Warm grain, maybe oats, maybe barley softened through hours of slow simmering. The aroma is comforting in a way that speaks more to routine than novelty. You sit at one of the long wooden tables. A monk ladles porridge into your bowl, thick, pale, honest food. You eat it slowly. Its warmth fills your mouth, spreads into your chest, settles deep. A spoonful after spoonful, your body wakes a little more. You feel the pulse in your fingertips again. A luxury in winter. The reading at breakfast is quiet. As always, something about humility, about patience, about observing the world with gentleness. You only half hear it, not out of disinterest, but because your mind is still thawing, your thoughts thick as the porridge. And that is allowed. Morning asks little of you here. After the meal, you step outside briefly. The courtyard air bites the tips of your ears, but you welcome it. The sky is turning a soft pearl color, spreading faint light across the snow. Your breath makes small clouds that drift upward, then vanish like shy ghosts. Soon, The day's work begins. The return to the scriptorium. Inside, the room is brighter than yesterday's dawn. Frost still grips the corners of the window panes, but sunlight, thin though it is, presses gently against the glass. Shadows soften. The wooden surfaces glow faintly, and the scriptorium smells the way it always does in the morning. Ink, parchment, cold air, and the promise of labor. You take your seat. Your stool creaks a greeting. Your desk feels familiar under your hands, its texture rough in some places, smooth in others. You dip your quill. The ink is reluctant, stiffened by the night's cold. You stir it gently, letting its surface ripple. When the quill lifts, the black bead that clings to it looks heavier than usual, thicker. The first stroke is imperfect. It leaves a blot, a tiny one, but noticeable. You sigh softly, amused more than annoyed. Winter is always in your ink one way or another. You sprinkle a little sand to dry the mistake, then continue. The scratching of quills fills the room. It is a soft, steady sound, a kind of whispered rain. You write slowly at first, letting your hand remember its work. Your breathing syncs with the movement. The text fills the page line by line, each letter a small contribution to the long, quiet story of the day. A monk at the far end warms his fingers over a small stone heated by the fire. Another rubs his wrist. Another gently brushes a speck of dust from his parchment as though tending to a living creature. The atmosphere is meditative but not solemn. There is comfort in the shared slowness. You look up once, noticing sunlight finally slipping through the narrow windows. It spills in thin, pale ribbons, catching dust motes that dance lazily in the beams. The air glows faintly. You inhale deeply. The room smells of morning now, cleaner, lighter, touched by day. You continue your work. The passage you copy today is about the virtue of steadiness, about how rivers carve paths through rock not by force, but by persistence. You smile at the coincidence, or at the reminder. Around this time, the cold begins to ease a little. You feel the tips of your ears recovering. Your fingertips sting slightly as warmth returns. Your shoulders loosen. The quill moves more smoothly now, dancing rather than trudging. Somewhere outside, a crow caws, loud compared to the scriptorium's silence. The sound echoes against the stone walls and fades slowly. A monk glances toward the window, then returns to his work without comment. You turn another page. The fresh parchment feels cool and almost silky under your hand. You press your palm lightly against it to keep it steady. The temperature of the room has warmed enough that the sheet lies flatter than yesterday. A small victory. You resume writing. The letters take shape under your quill, lines growing like winter vines along the page. Your breath is steady now. Your mind is clear. The day feels longer, but not in an oppressive way. Simply fuller. At one point, someone shifts their stool a little too abruptly, producing a short squeak that startles both him and the candle beside him. The room collectively acknowledges the moment with a silent wave of amusement, though no one smiles too broadly. Monastic humor is very quiet. A little later, someone brings warm water in a clay jug. They pour it into cups along the table. You lift yours, warming your fingers around it. The steam rises, carrying a faint scent of mint. You sip slowly. The warmth moves through you like a slow sunrise. And then comes the next hook in your rhythm. It is still not midday. You set your quill aside for a moment and stretch your shoulders, rolling them gently until the tension softens. The room breathes with you. Your eyes wander along the long table, parchment, quills, knife tools for trimming, small piles of sand, ink pots in ordered rows. The tools of your day. Winter presses against the windows, but inside, your work continues, steady as breath. A monk near the doorway clears his throat and murmurs a small prayer. Another joins. The rest follow silently, letting the soft words float upward. It lasts only a moment. Then quiet settles again. The day stretches calmly before you. And though the sky beyond the windows remains pale, and the cold remains sharp, you feel anchored, rooted in a pattern older than yourself. You pick up your quill once more. The rest of morning waits patiently. Mid-morning creeps in with the subtle confidence of someone who knows you will not chase them away. The light in the scriptorium shifts again. Still pale, still winter thin, but steadier now, as though the sun has finally accepted its responsibilities. You lift your eyes from your parchment and notice a faint glow along the stone windowsill, a soft halo around the frost. Even the dust motes seem more awake, drifting lazily through the beam like sleepy dancers stretching before rehearsal. Your shoulders feel warm, or at least warmer. A small victory. A monk across from you nods once, a silent acknowledgement that the deepest chill of morning has passed. Monasteries communicate many things without words. Weather updates, moods, fatigue, and the collective sense that lunch is still quite far away. You return your attention to the parchment. Your quill has begun to cooperate at last. The ink flows more willingly, leaving dark, confident strokes. You trace each letter with care, feeling the tiny vibrations of the quill against the surface. The parchment gives a soft resistance, like a well-worn path asking you to tread gently. The passage you copy now describes the nature of diligence. It speaks of tending tasks as one tends embers, blowing lightly to keep them alive, but never so hard that the flame becomes unruly. You pause at that image. Feels fitting. You imagine the monks at their desks, each of you small caretakers of fragile flames, coaxing pages into existence one breath at a time. Your hand grows tired, so you pause to stretch your fingers. The joints crack softly, a quiet little series of pops that would be rude anywhere else. But here they are simply part of the room's quiet soundtrack. You rub your knuckles gently and shake out your hand. Then you rest your palm on the warm cloth-wrapped stone near your desk, still radiating the heat it absorbed earlier. It feels like holding someone's steady heartbeat. The door creaks softly. A monk enters with a small basket of thin wood shavings. They smell faintly of resin. He distributes them among the braziers, feeding the coals with patient, careful hands. The new fuel releases a subtle fragrance, warm and slightly sweet. For a moment, the entire scriptorium smells like a forest in winter sun. You breathe deeply, savoring the scent. It lingers like a memory from a different season. The room grows warmer by a sliver, enough to loosen your shoulders further, enough to coax your toes back to life inside your woolen socks. The light shifts again, a little brighter, almost cheerful. You feel the day gathering momentum, though gently, never rushing, never pushing. A monk sitting by the window sighs quietly. His breath fogs the glass in a small cloud. He draws a tiny cross in the condensation with the tip of his finger before wiping it away and returning to work. The gesture is simple, almost childish, but full of tenderness. Winter invites those small comforts. You continue your writing. The scratch of your quill mingles with the others, forming a kind of soft communal murmur. The repetition lulls you into a steady calm. Your breath matches the rhythm. Your mind sinks deeper into the slow creak of monastic time, where hours stretch without pressure, where productivity is measured not by speed but by devotion. At some point, a brother stands and begins preparing pigments at the illumination table. He grinds something, a mineral perhaps, between two polished stones. The grinding sound is slow and deliberate, a heartbeat-like pulse that fills the space in a gentle way. You glance over. Blue dust clings to his fingertips. Soon the room will smell faintly of vinegar and glue as he mixes binder into the pigment. You will breathe it in and think of distant summers, bright skies, and seas you have never seen. A soft thump interrupts your thoughts. Snow slipping from the roof. The sound echoes along the corridor, muffled by thick stone and powder outside. A second thump follows. Then silence again. Outside, winter continues sculpting the world with methodical patience. You finish another page. The satisfaction is quiet but real. You blow gently across the fresh ink, watching it darken and settle. Then you sprinkle a bit of sand, tap the parchment lightly, and tilt it to let the grains fall away. A small ritual in itself. Not long after, the bell rings. Not a loud bell. Nothing here is loud, but a gentle, rounded chime that seems to float into the room rather than shake it. You lift your head. A few monks exchange glances. Mid-morning prayer. You stretch once more and rise from your stool. Your knees protest slightly, though politely. The air in the corridor is cooler than in the scriptorium, carrying a faint scent of stone newly warmed by sunlight. You walk with the others toward the chapel. The sound of footsteps echoes softly beneath the arches, each footfall overlapping with others in a rhythm as familiar as breathing. Inside, the light has changed. Thin shafts of pale gold slip through the high windows, illuminating drifting dust particles that look almost like suspended snowflakes. The candles flicker in the breeze of entering bodies. Their flames cast trembling halos on the stone pillars. The prayer begins. The chant is slightly higher pitched than the morning one, more awake, more confident. It moves like a quiet river over smooth stones. You let the melody reach you, drift through you. The words roll gently along your thoughts, smoothing the roughness of the hours already spent. When the final Amen fades, you bow and follow the monks back out. On the way to the scriptorium, you pass the kitchen. The cook is slicing root vegetables with slow precision. The knife taps gently against the wooden board. Carrots, parsnips, onions, simple produce stored from autumn. Each slice releases a faint scent, sharp and earthy. The pot behind him simmers quietly. Steam rises, carrying hints of broth and herbs. Your stomach perks up, optimistically misinterpreting the moment. You smile faintly at its enthusiasm. Lunch, however, remains a distant possibility. You return to your desk. The afternoon light is softer now, but still present, still encouraging. Your parchment awaits. Your quill is ready. The room feels like an embrace, cool but familiar. You begin another section. The words flow more easily now. Your hand moves with a quiet confidence. You fall again into the rhythm of strokes and breaths. A soft breeze slips under the door, carries the smell of snow and pine. Someone shivers. Someone else pulls their hood forward. You simply pause, letting the cold brush your cheeks, reminding you that winter remains vigilant. The breeze dies. Warmth creeps back in. The chapter you copy describes hospitality, receiving guests as though they were saints in disguise. You imagine unexpected travelers entering the monastery on a stormy night, cloaks heavy with snow, hands trembling, faces weary. The monks offering bread, warmth, a blanket, no questions, no judgment, only simple kindness. You nod to yourself. It is a comforting thought. Time moves slowly, then steadily, then slowly again. Winter inches along the hours like a careful scribe tracing a delicate line. Your hand grows tired once more. You rest, stretching your shoulders, shifting your weight. A monk at the table clears his throat. Another stands to refill his ink pot. The air smells faintly of hot wax and cold stone. You take a sip of water. It is no longer painfully cold, only crisp. You savor it. The bell rings again. Midday. Finally. You exhale a tiny laugh, as quiet as a smile. Even the candle flame seems to flicker in approval. You rise with the others and follow the familiar path to the refectory. The warmth there greets you like a slow embrace. The pot on the hearth bubbles gently. The smell is richer now, lentils, carrots, herbs. Bread rests in neat slices on the table. You sit. A bowl is placed before you. Steam curls upward, touching your face with gentle warmth. You lift the spoon. The first taste is earthy, simple, soothing. The second is even better. Warmth spreads through your chest, down your arms, into your belly. You eat slowly, savoring each bite. The reading at lunch is slow and steady. You listen with half of your mind. The other half simply exists, breathing, resting, absorbing warmth. When the meal ends, the refectory grows quiet again. You rise, stretching your back. A faint drowsiness tugs at your eyelids. The winter midday slump. Everyone feels it. Even the candles seem a bit sleepy. You step outside briefly into the cloister. The air is bright but cold, crisp as a page freshly scraped. Snow still falls, but lightly, in faint drifting strands. You inhale deeply. The air tastes clean, a little metallic, a little sharp. Your breath forms a pale cloud that hangs for a moment before dissolving into nothing. The afternoon waits. You turn, pulling your robe closer, and walk back toward the scriptorium. The day is only half done, and winter, patient as ever, is nowhere near finished. The afternoon settles in with the kind of quiet certainty only winter possesses, a certainty built not on urgency, but on endurance. The air in the scriptorium is warmer now, though only by degrees. Still enough that your fingers flex without complaint. Still enough that the candle flame rises a little taller, a little less threatened by every small draft. You return to your desk after the midday meal feeling both refreshed and faintly drowsy, the kind of drowsiness that comes not from exhaustion, but from warmth after cold, from full stomach after thin hours, from the rhythm of the day running pleasantly smooth along its tracks. Your stool accepts you with a soft creak. The wooden grain is familiar against your fingertips. You pick up your quill, its tip resting obediently in the small groove carved into the wood. The ink glistens in the pot, still dark, still thick, but not as reluctant as it was during dawn. You dip the quill lightly, tapping the excess off against the rim in a faint, delicate click that feels strangely satisfying. The text before you continues the theme of discipline. It speaks of small tasks done with great care, of patient repetition, of building something enduring one modest gesture at a time. You smile faintly. The manuscript seems to be describing your life moment by moment. Your strokes begin again, neat and steady. The quill scratches gently along the parchment, leaving behind precise ink trails. Each letter feels purposeful, each word a soft footprint on the pale surface. The scriptorium hums with quiet industry. One monk coughs softly. Another shifts his weight. Another rolls his shoulders with a faint pop. Someone near the back recites a line under his breath, checking his Latin with a careful murmur. The window glass rattles faintly as wind nudges at the frame. These sounds form a tapestry of calm, woven from threads of routine. Sunlight muted, diluted, but determined, filters through the windows. It lays across your desk in a thin golden wash. Dust motes drift through it like tiny wandering spirits. You watch them for a moment, mesmerized by their slow, aimless choreography. A monk nearby begins trimming his quill with a small knife, the metal scraping softly against the feather's shaft. The sound is clean, delicate, like distant birdsong. He inspects the nib with great seriousness, then nods as though awarding it approval. The quiet dignity of monastic craftsmanship. You write on. Time moves differently in the afternoon. It doesn't stretch or shrink. It simply settles, like snow finding its rightful place on the ground. After a while, though how long is impossible to know, you complete another page. You lay it gently atop the stack of finished sheets, tapping the edge to align it neatly. The parchment makes a soft, whispered sigh, as though grateful to rest. Your body calls for another stretch. You rise slowly, letting your robe settle around your legs. The air feels cooler once you move away from the candle, and you inhale deeply. The scent of parchment reaches you, dry, clean, faintly animal. The smell of centuries preserved. You walk toward the narrow window. The frost on the glass has formed new patterns. Tiny branching fractals that look like illuminated script written by winter itself. Beyond them, the courtyard is a muted white landscape. The snow falls more heavily now, drifting in slow spirals that seem to ignore gravity. Your breath fogs the glass slightly. You let your fingers hover near it without touching. The cold radiates clearly without help. A brother passes behind you, carrying a leather-bound volume. You follow him with your eyes as he places it on a shelf, brushes a bit of dust from the spine, and bows his head briefly before returning to his seat. The gesture feels like a miniature blessing, given quietly to a book that has survived time. You return to your desk. The quill lies where you left it, as loyal as any tool can be. The next parchment waits patiently. The candle trembles lightly, reminding you that daylight is not eternal, and winter steals from it freely. You begin writing again, but soon enough you're interrupted by the gentle tap of a wooden block, the signal for a brief pause. Every monk lifts his head at the same time, as though controlled by a single string. You stand once more and join the others in stretching. Shoulders rise, arms extend, necks tilt. The corridor outside the scriptorium carries a faint breeze, cool, crisp, tinged with the aroma of snow. You step into it, letting the chill brush your face, waking you just enough. A novice walks by with a tray of warm stones wrapped in cloth. You accept one gratefully, feeling its heat seep into your palms. For a moment you close your eyes, holding the stone against your chest where the warmth settles like a small, comforting animal. You set it near your desk, watching steam rise faintly from the fabric in the cold air. The lull ends. Time returns to its slow, steady pace. You sit and resume the work. This next passage speaks of humility, how knowledge grows more quietly than pride, how silence can teach more than argument, how winter teaches the wisdom of stillness. You smile at that. Winter has been tutoring you since the day you arrived. Outside, the wind picks up. You hear it sweep across the roof, a low, steady whisper. Snow thuds softly against the wall. The room grows quieter in response, as though listening. Then another sound, a flutter. A bird, perhaps a sparrow, lands briefly on the outer sill of the window. You hear its claws scritch faintly on frost. It chirps once, a small high note that startles the silence. Then it flies away, leaving only a faint breath of movement in its wake. A tiny reminder that not all life hides during winter. You dip your quill again. The ink is warmer now, more fluid. You write a little faster, though still with care. The letters form an even rhythm, like footsteps in fresh snow. Time passes. Someone stands to collect completed pages. He moves slowly, reverently, gathering each parchment as though lifting something fragile. When he reaches your desk, he bows his head slightly. You bow yours in return. He takes the page and carries it away, stacking it neatly with the others destined for binding. Your desk feels lighter without it. The bell rings again, this one lower, rounder. The hour of simple manual work. You rise and follow the monks outside into the cloister. The cold greets you like a familiar instructor, stern but fair. Snowflakes cling to your robe as you step into the sheltered walkway. Your breath escapes in pale clouds. Today's task, tending the woodpile. You and two others move toward the storage shed at the far end of the courtyard. The shed smells of pine shavings, old bark, cold sap. Inside, the logs are stacked in tall, uneven columns. You carry what you can, each log heavy, rough, honest. The bark brushes your sleeves, leaving faint dustings of wood grain. With each trip, you feel the warmth rising in your chest. Work like this wakes muscles you forget you have. It also clears the mind in a way writing never can. Your footsteps crunch rhythmically. Snow builds on your shoulders before melting. Your fingers tingle from gripping the wood. When the pile near the refectory is replenished, you wipe your hands on your robe, leaving pale streaks of sawdust. The cold bites your knuckles as if jealous of the warmth you've earned. You tuck your hands into your sleeves. The bell rings again, not for prayer, not for work, but for transition. You follow the others back inside. Warm air meets your face with gentle contradiction. It smells of dinner in progress. Lentils, garlic, a hint of bay leaf. You return again to the scriptorium. The afternoon light has dimmed further. Candles glow brighter. The shadows grow longer, gathering near the floor like quiet pools. You take your seat, feeling the weight of the day settle softly on your shoulders. Your work continues. The passages now describe charity, how it thrives in small gestures, how warmth given to others returns like a reflection. You copy the words slowly, letting their meaning brush across your thoughts. Outside, the sky shifts toward gray-blue. Evening approaches, though not quickly. Winter evenings prefer to drift rather than arrive. A monk near you touches his candle, nudging the wick to straighten it. The flame steadies. The room glows. Someone coughs quietly. Someone else murmurs a short prayer. The sound blends with the quill's soft scratching, weaving the hour into your memory. You place another inked page aside. This time you notice something. The light outside has shifted farther toward dusk. Evening is close, but not quite here. And the day, long as it has been, is still unfolding. Evening begins its slow descent over the monastery, not as a sudden curtain, but as a gradual softening of edges. The scriptorium's corners darken first, gathering shadows like the hems of a cloak. The windows fade from pale gray to a deeper blue. Candles take on more authority, their light no longer competing with the day but guiding it gently toward rest. You straighten slightly, easing the stiffness that has crept into your back. Your quill rests in your hand like a familiar companion exhausted at the same pace as you. You shake out your fingers and glance around. Every monk in the room seems suspended in the same liminal stillness, that quiet threshold between effort and quiet acceptance of the coming dusk. Someone shifts, adjusting his robe. Someone else blows softly on a candle to coax the flame back to life. The mingled scents of tallow, old parchment, and winter drift together in calm, cool layers. You breathe them in, imagining each smell as a thin ribbon that ties you to this moment. Your quill needs trimming. You can feel it. Its strokes have grown increasingly hesitant, slightly ragged at the edges. You open the small wooden box beside your desk, take out the tiny penknife, and hold the feather close. The knife glides along the quill's edge, producing a delicate scraping sound. HHP, HHP, like snow being brushed from stone. You inspect the nib, tilt it toward the candlelight, then nod once. Satisfactory. You set down the knife and dip the quill again, marveling at how trimming such a slender tool can feel like sharpening your own thoughts. The words you copy now discuss the virtue of silence, its quiet strength, its ability to shape the spaces between actions. You smile faintly at the irony. Here, silence is not just a virtue. It's the architecture of your entire day. Each monk builds his hours from it the way a mason builds walls from stone. You write a few more lines. The ink glides smoothly, leaving dark strokes that seem to gleam in the candlelight. When you pause, you notice how your breath drifts just above the parchment, warm enough to send a tiny ripple through the air. A monk beside you gently clears his throat. It sounds soft, shy, apologetic. Another monk nods at the sound, as though acknowledging a perfectly reasonable conversation starter in this realm of tiny noises. Outside, the wind shifts again. You hear it pull along the eaves, a soft sigh that echoes through the stone walls. Snowflakes tap the window, faint as fingers drumming wool. Their sound blends with the room's quiet melody of quills and breathing. You take a moment to rest your eyes. You lean back, staring upward. The ceiling beams are darkened by centuries of smoke, touched by the hands of craftsmen long gone. Candlelight flickers against them, catching the rough grain in soft, gold flashes. It feels like looking up at the ribs of some ancient, sleeping creature. After a moment, you return to your work. Winter evenings are long, and the monastery fills them with steady purpose. Time passes, slowly, gently, without hesitation. Then the wooden block taps again. Break. You set down your quill, grateful. When you stand, your legs feel stiff, your robe brushing your ankles with a soft whisper. You follow the others toward the cloister walkway to breathe a little cold, a little movement, a little memory of the world beyond parchment. The cold outside is deeper now, with a blue tint that feels almost liquid. You inhale, and your lungs tighten pleasantly. The air tastes like iron, pine, and the faintest hint of distant smoke from a chimney. Snow lies everywhere in smooth layers that glow faintly in the approaching dusk. The sky above is a bruised purple. Clouds stretch thin like wool drying in winter wind. Your footsteps crunch softly. That sound, the crisp breaking of fresh snow, has its own comfort, a rhythm that reassures you that the world outside is still breathing. A monk is sweeping the stone walkway once more, though the snow falls too lightly to truly need clearing. Perhaps it is habit. Perhaps it is devotion. Perhaps he simply likes the motion. The broom makes a soft, rhythmic hiss across the floor. You walk slowly, hands tucked into your sleeves. The cold reaches your fingertips even through the wool, and you flex them gently to keep the numbness at bay. Your breath forms white shapes that drift upward, dissolving almost immediately. A bell rings faintly in the distance, just once. Not a call, merely a note of preparation. A soft reminder that the final arc of the day is beginning. You re-enter the scriptorium. Warm air greets you in a timid wave. Candles have been replaced or trimmed, their flames burning steadily. Shadows climb higher up the walls. The atmosphere feels smaller now, closer, as though night has stepped inside and found a chair. You take your place once more. Your stool creaks, your quill waits. The page glows faintly in the candle's golden circle. You begin writing again, though slower now. Evening has a way of thinning your focus, softening the sharpness of your attention. But it also makes each line feel more meditative, more contemplative. The manuscript's next passage speaks of duty, how monotony can be a kind of devotion, how repetition shapes a soul more than rare bursts of inspiration. You nod unconsciously. Winter itself seems to be copying the same lesson across the world every day. Outside, night continues its slow arrival. The windows reflect the candle flames now, not the sky. You glance into one reflection briefly and see your own silhouette, slightly distorted by the uneven glass. It looks both familiar and distant, like a version of yourself halfway between seasons. At some point, another monk begins preparing the lamps for twilight. He moves with a calm, practiced grace, checking each wick, adjusting each flame. When he passes behind you, his robe rustles softly against the stone floor. He pauses just long enough to ensure your candle is steady before continuing on. Your ink thinning, you stir the pot gently with the quill. The liquid ripples, reflecting the golden flame like a night river carrying fire instead of stars. You resume writing, dipping and stroking, dipping and stroking. Hours pass or minutes. In a monastery, the difference often dissolves. Finally, the bell rings. Soft, round, unmistakable. The call to the evening meal. You set down your quill, flex your fingers, numb, tired but content, and rise. The scriptorium feels warmer than it did in the morning. Your body feels heavier, but pleasantly so, as though filled with the day's gentle weight. When you step into the corridor, the smell of the evening meal greets you. Stewed root vegetables, herbs from last summer dried on string, a hint of warm bread reheated on a stone. The scent alone is almost enough to warm you. In the refectory, lanterns glow softly. The meal is simple as always, but comforting. Lentils, carrots softened into sweetness, a piece of bread with a darker crust, perhaps even a drizzle of oil, an unspoken generosity from the kitchen monk. You eat with quiet pleasure. Each bite is warm, grounding, slow. The reading during the meal drifts into the background, a calm river of words that washes gently over your thoughts without anchoring them. When supper ends and the final blessing is given, the monks file out once more into the corridor. The building hums with a sense of closure, as though every stone tile knows the day is nearly finished. Then comes the time for Compline, the last prayer. You walk toward the chapel with the others. The air feels colder again. The sky through the windows is completely dark. A few stars flicker faintly, their light dimmed by drifting clouds. Inside the chapel, candles burn quietly, their flames steady and solemn. You take your place. Silence settles like a blanket. When the chant begins, it is softer than all the others, gentle as a lullaby but richer, deeper. The notes stretch into the shadows, curl around the pillars, drift up into the wooden beams. You bow your head. Your breath slows. The last note lingers, then disappears, like a snowflake melting on warm wool. And that is the final turning of the day. Outside, night has claimed the monastery fully. The courtyard glows faintly under a blanket of fresh snow. The air bites your skin gently, like winter reminding you it is still very much awake. You return to your cell. The candlelight flickers softly along the wall. Your bed, simple, narrow, familiar, waits with its rough wool blanket and straw mattress. You undress slowly, folding your robe, feeling the day settle inside your limbs like a soft ache. When you lie down, the blanket scratches your cheek, but kindly. The straw shifts beneath you, molding to your body. You close your eyes, hearing the faintest echo of chant in your memory, the soft thrum of winter beyond the shutters. Your breath slows. Sleep begins to gather around you, and winter continues its quiet watch. Night in the monastery is not empty. It is full of small sounds, soft breathings, subtle movements of wood and stone settling into their long winter positions. You lie in your cell for a while, listening to those muted murmurs, the gentle creak of beams contracting in the cold, the faint rustle of straw beneath your weight, the whisper of wind searching for cracks in the shutters. All of it forms a kind of nocturnal chorus, quiet but steady, like the monastery remembering itself. When sleep finally arrives, it comes not as a plunge but as a slow drifting. One moment you are listening to the faint swell of wind. The next you are floating somewhere between awareness and dream, your thoughts dissolving into a warm, wool-lined haze. You do not know how long you sleep. Time in a monastery at night is strange. Hours broaden and narrow like the lungs of something ancient breathing slowly beneath the stone. But eventually you stir. Your eyelids flutter. You feel the cool air on your cheek, a small reminder that winter always waits at the edges of sleep. You do not rise fully. just enough to adjust your blanket, tucking it over your shoulder. The wool scratches lightly against your neck. The straw mattress shifts with a soft rustle. Your breath fogs faintly in the air, then fades. The candle on your shelf is long extinguished, but a sliver of moonlight leaks through the shutter's crack, painting the floor in a thin, silver line. You let yourself drift again. When morning finally comes, or something close to morning, you wake to near darkness. The cold has intensified. It hums quietly against the walls. But you have rested deeply. Your body feels heavy, warm in a slow way, softened by sleep. You sit up, pulling the blanket around your shoulders like a cloak. Your toes curl instinctively at the cold stones beneath them. The air smells faintly of wool, winter, and the last traces of the candle you burned the night before. You dress carefully, feeling each layer settle around you like a familiar rhythm. Outside your door, the corridor is dim but not completely dark. A lantern flickers at the far end, casting a warm pool of gold along the floor. A monk walks past, barefoot on the stone, moving with the soft, floating steps of someone well-practiced in navigating silence. He nods to you. You bow your head in return. The time for the night office has arrived, vigils, the earliest prayer. You follow the quiet procession into the chapel. The cold inside feels sharper here, caught between high walls and vaulted ceilings that hold onto winter longer than the rest of the monastery. Yet the silence is warm in its own way, deep and protective. Candles are already lit. Their flames sway lightly as monks take their places. The air tastes faintly of incense from yesterday, a lazy trace of resin and wood smoke lingering in the stillness. The chant begins. It is slower than any other hour's chant. Long pauses, low tones, a hum that feels carved out of darkness itself. The voices rise and fall so gently that the sound feels like breath rather than melody. You let it settle into you, guiding your mind into the spacious hush of pre-dawn. When the prayer ends, you feel the world around you expand slightly, as though the darkness has softened, letting in a little more room for the day. You move toward the refectory for a small morning draft. Barely more than warm water with herbs, but comforting. The clay cup warms your hands. The liquid is mild but fragrant. Mint, perhaps rosemary. A reminder that beneath the snow sleeps a garden waiting for spring. After the drink, you step into the cloister walk. Dawn has begun its slow unfurling. The snow outside glows faintly blue. The sky a pale gray that promises light even if it hasn't yet decided to provide any. Your breath rises warmly in small clouds, then fades. The monastery feels half awake, half asleep. You stand for a moment, just watching the snow fall. Each flake seems to choose its path carefully, drifting in lazy spirals. The air is still. The courtyard lies untouched again, smooth and perfect. You find yourself admiring how winter erases the footprints of each day, giving you the illusion of a new beginning even when the routine is the same. Soon, you hear quiet footsteps behind you. A monk approaches with a small lantern, gesturing gently toward the scriptorium. The day's work awaits again, but gently, patiently. Inside, the scriptorium is cold, colder than yesterday. The braziers have not yet been tended. When you sit, the wooden stool greets you with a chill that seeps through your robe. Your fingers tingle as you arrange your parchment, ink, quill. But then, slowly, almost ceremonially, Monks enter with shovels of fresh coals carried from the kitchen hearth. The braziers wake with a soft crackle. Warmth spreads in thin ripples. The chill recedes from the air, not disappearing but shifting into the corners. You dip your quill. The ink is stiff, thicker than before. You warm the pot lightly near the brazier until the surface loosens into smooth, glossy black. Only then do you begin. The words on this next page describe steadfastness, how a life is built from thousands of quiet acts, each one stacking neatly on the last like bricks in a wall. You breathe slowly as you write, pacing your strokes with the message. You feel yourself settling into the work, into the cold, into the quiet, into the morning. Your breath becomes rhythmic. Your thoughts soften into long, slow arcs. A monk on your left shivers lightly, pulling his hood further forward. Another rubs his hands together. The small chorus of winter gestures. Yet no one complains. This is simply the season, the circumstance, the shape of the world for now. Outside, the snow grows heavier. You hear it brushing against the window in long, soft sighs. Occasionally, it slides down the roof in a gentle hush. The sound is soothing, like fabric pulled across a table. You pause to stretch. Your fingers ache. Not painfully, just persistently. Winter has a way of infiltrating the joints no matter how many layers you wear. You rotate your wrists slowly. The relief comes gradually. A brother brings warm stones wrapped in cloth again. He places one beside your ink pot. You press your hands against it. The warmth is subtle but immediate, easing your fingers in a way that feels like a small blessing. You continue writing. The snow outside grows lighter again, then heavier, then lighter, winter shifting moods as quietly as breathing. The windows cloud with condensation. You wipe a little away with your sleeve to watch how the world blurs beyond the frost. And still the words continue to flow. Eventually, another monk rises and begins preparing the illumination pigments. He stirs powders into small clay bowls, adding binder with a thin brush. The pigments release their scents, earthy, mineral, faintly metallic. You close your eyes briefly and inhale. The fragrance is strangely invigorating. When he begins applying gold leaf to a page, the glow reflects on his face like a warm, secret sun. You watch the shimmer in the corner of your eye, grateful for that small spark of brightness in the otherwise muted palette of winter. Time moves. A bell rings softly. Not the call for the next office, just a gentle reminder of the turning hour. You look up. The light in the room has shifted. The shadows lean differently. The air feels less heavy. Someone stands to stretch. You follow. Your legs protest a little, but the movement warms them quickly. You step toward the window, watching how the snowflakes dance in tiny spirals. They land on the sill in a soft, uneven line, like notes on an unfamiliar staff. You return to your desk. The parchment waits like a calm pool. You pick up your quill. Your work continues. And still, it is not yet midday. There's a gentle humor in that thought, a soft tug of irony. You breathe out a small laugh, silent but real. Winter days in a monastery are long, but somehow never too long. They stretch like threads, not ropes. Your quill strokes become more fluid, your letters more confident. You lose yourself in the quiet discipline of the page, in the slow unfurling of a winter morning deep inside ancient stone walls. You forget the cold. You forget time. You forget everything except the soft scratch of Quill and the gentle glow of candlelight. And that, you realize, is the monastery's quiet magic. It gathers you, steadies you, carries you through the day one breath at a time. Midday arrives in the monastery without ceremony. No bright sun, no sudden warmth, no triumphant shift in the sky. Instead, it unfolds like a cautious guest stepping quietly into a room. Here, but not drawing attention. The windows brighten only slightly, offering a gentle gray that softens the shadows but never quite dispels them. You pause for a moment, letting the change settle into your senses. The parchment before you looks faintly lighter. The ink strokes crisper against the page. Your candle, once the primary source of light, now competes gently with day. Its flame wavers, as if relieved to no longer bear the whole burden of illumination. Your stomach offers a polite reminder of the hour. You set down your quill and rub your fingers together, feeling the faint roughness of dried ink on your skin. You stretch your back, hearing a soft protest from the joints that have been still too long. Winter slows everything, thoughts, limbs, breath. But in this place, slowness is not a flaw. It is a rhythm. The bell rings, round, gentle, unhurried. You rise from your table and join the silent procession toward the refectory. The corridor is warmer than before, thanks to sunlight, however pale, filtering through high windows. A faint smell of simmering vegetables drifts from the kitchen, a promise of heat and sustenance. Inside the refectory, the air is thick with warmth and steam. Bowls are placed before you. Today's midday meal is slightly richer. Lentils, a piece of barley bread, and a spoonful of stewed apples saved carefully from autumn's harvest. The apples are soft, sweet, tangy, an indulgence by monastic standards. You eat slowly. Each bite warms your chest in quiet, blooming pulses. Across from you, a monk wipes his bowl with a scrap of bread, making sure not a drop is wasted. Another bows his head over his meal, exhaling a breath that fogs faintly in the cool air. A reading begins, soft, steady, lilting. The words drift through the room the way incense drifts through the chapel. Gently, without insistence. You listen without trying to memorize anything. The sound is enough. Meaning is a guest in this moment, not a master. When the meal ends, you rise again with the others, your movements slow and comfortable. The warmth stays with you as you step outside into the cloister, where the air is cold again but more forgiving now that your body carries a gentle fire inside. Snow continues to fall, but lightly, like a soft curtain closing and opening with each small gust of wind. You stand for a moment beneath the arches, watching flakes gather on the courtyard fountain's frozen stone lip. Winter moves in delicate ways here, subtle, persistent, unhurried. The bell rings again. Time to return. You take your place in the scriptorium once more. The afternoon light is kinder, more generous. The braziers glow gently. The candles, though still lit, seem less essential. Their flames dance lazily, as though resting after the morning's long labor. You begin writing again. This passage speaks of balance, the way each hour holds its own shape, its own gift. How mornings sharpen the mind, afternoons steady the will, evenings soften the spirit. You feel the truth of it in your bones. You copy the words with delicate care. The ink flows well now, warm enough to be obedient, cool enough to hold its shape. The quill glides across the page with soft confidence. Your hand moves as though it remembers a dance learned long ago. A monk beside you shifts, stretching his legs. Another inhales deeply, blowing warm air into his cupped hands before returning to his work. A third adjusts his candlewick, the small flame crowning itself anew. Outside, the wind rises. You hear a soft groan from the distant rafters, a sound like an old house clearing its throat. Snow sweeps past the windows in swirling eddies. The monastery stands firm against it, stone steady, stone patient. You lift your quill and glance toward the nearest window. The daylight is beginning to thin again, losing its silver sharpness. Afternoon is entering its quieter stage. Shadows stretch longer across the floor. Candles glow warmer in the cooling air. You stretch once more, standing beside your desk. The wooden floor whispers beneath your feet. Your eyes feel slightly dry from the hours of focus. You blink slowly, letting your gaze wander across the room. The monks remain absorbed in their work. Their hoods cast soft shadows over their faces. Their hands, some weathered, some young, move steadily across parchment. The scriptorium hums with a quiet that is not silence but devotion made audible. You return to your seat. More writing waits. You copy another paragraph. This one about resilience, the slow and steady strength that grows in quiet, not in applause. The strength found in cold mornings, in threadbare gloves, in long winters and longer tasks. You feel your breath deepen as you trace each word. A monk rises to fetch more parchment. The stack in the corner rustles faintly as he lifts it. The dry scent fills the air briefly, crisp and wholesome. You inhale. It feels like breathing in the history of 100 winters. At some point, the afternoon light fades further. Shadows collect beneath the desks. The candles burn brighter now, embracing their role once again as guardians of visibility. A young novice enters carrying a jug of warm drink, likely watered wine or herbs infused in hot water. He moves quietly among the desks, offering the cups with gentle, shy hands. When he reaches you, the warmth of the clay cup seeps into your palms instantly. You nod your gratitude. He bows his head and moves on. You sip. The drink is mild, but its warmth travels through you like a slow current. You exhale, feeling your shoulders soften. Now come the final hours of the day, the ones that slip between afternoon and evening, between effort and reflection. You write slowly, less focused on speed, more on presence. Each stroke feels like a deep breath, each word like a step towards stillness. And then another bell, the call to light evening tasks, the last small duties before supper and prayer. You rise. Outside, the courtyard is washed in a muted blue light. The snow has deepened, softening corners, rounding edges, turning even the stone fountain into a gentle shape. The air is crisp but calm. Your breath rises in slow ribbons. Your task is simple, clearing snow from the steps leading to the chapel. You take a wooden broom and begin sweeping. The sound is soft, brushing, rhythmic. Snow collects at the base of the steps in a growing drift. Your hands ache slightly, but pleasantly. Your body warms with the movement. When you finish, twilight has settled fully. The sky above the courtyard is the color of old parchment tinted with dusk. A single star trembles faintly behind thin clouds. You return to the monastery's warm interior, snow melting from your sleeves. You feel the day within you now, its cold, its warmth, its scratch of quill, its quiet chants, its softness. The refectory glows with lantern light. Supper is simple again, warm broth, bread, a hint of roasted root vegetable. You eat with gratitude, knowing that each bowl, however humble, carries hours of care from the kitchen monk. The reading at dinner is gentler, chosen to ease minds into evening. You listen, not catching every word, but sinking into the cadence like settling into warm straw. When the meal ends, the monks rise as one. Compline calls. In the chapel, candles shine like small constellations. The air holds a hush so deep it seems to wrap around your thoughts. You bow your head. The chant begins, slow, warm, steady, like the heartbeat of the monastery itself. You feel your breath follow it. You feel your shoulders lower. You feel winter recede from your bones. When the final note fades into the vaulted dark, the silence that remains is tender, protective, full. You walk once more through the cloister, snow quiet beneath your feet. The sky above is deeper now, a velvet darkness sprinkled with faint stars. The courtyard gleams softly with its fresh blanket of snow. Back in your cell, the cold greets you gently, like an old friend who visits only in winter. You light your candle. The flame flickers, filling the room with soft amber. You remove your robe, fold it neatly, settle onto your straw mattress. The blanket is scratchy but warm. Your body sighs into rest. You close your eyes. The scent of ink still lingers faintly on your fingertips. The echo of chant hums in your thoughts. The weight of winter presses lightly around you. Not harsh, not distant, simply present. You breathe. You feel sleep gather like slow-falling snow. And in the quiet of a Benedictine winter night, the monastery keeps watch. A soft, steady world. A world of parchment and quill. A world of warmth carved from cold. A world that holds you gently through the long, patient dark.